And we are live with the Pixelated Echoes. Hey everyone, I'm 3-Bit. I'm here with my good friend Mav of the Fun Speculation Network, being the first episode, I guess an introduction to the show itself is necessary. Wanted to create my own show for a while, have spaces to do reviews, podcasts, news, all the things, and bring just kind of a unique perspective to conversation where the media might have like a flag on certain takes. Me being in the industry and being passionate about games is kind of why I just wanted to make this show. So I do want to shout out Steel Rain. He initially was starting this journey with me, but life always comes first. So I hope you're doing okay, brother. And as of now, it is just me. But I did decide to kidnap Mav in the meantime. He had no idea I was gonna put that little animation in the beginning. But hey, you got the hat and everything. So it's gonna be a fun show. We got all this stuff set up. So yeah, weeks of just creating the look and feel of this show, and I'm sure it'll evolve throughout different episodes. So we got the Mavuline, hit singer, the pony riding diss track artist, the fun of speculations. This man has several shows which I am a part of, and he's in FSP, Fun Pop, PM and the PM with Mav and Pong, and of course, where it all began for me and him is Xbox Ultimate Podcast. Mav, how are you doing today, brother? What have we been playing? What have you been up to?
Oh, man. First off, it is an absolute honor to be the first guest here for your new show, 3-Bit. Super happy for you because I know you've been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes and everything on this. Your graphics and everything are absolutely astounding. And my wife, also Caitlin, in the chat,
Yeah.
approves. She is saying it looks great as well. And the intro thing, that's what happens when you actually have like a game developer, animator,
I had to do it.
have a gaming podcast. So
Yeah.
that was absolutely amazing. I was like, and you told me that was me. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, is that the hat? So I went and grabbed the hat that matched what you did in the video. So that's absolutely freaking awesome, man. And
Yeah.
shout out to the fun speculation building you had in the background.
Yeah,
You know,
I feel like people
up for-
weren't going to see that at first. I was like,
Yeah.
I added little Easter eggs in there.
feel like you're setting yourself up though, because you're gonna have to do that for every guest now, and I cannot imagine how much work that is. But
Yeah.
if anybody can do it, I know it's you, man. But it's an honor to be here. As far as games, I've been playing a lot of different stuff. Helldivers 2. Been playing quite a bit of that. Been playing. I tried to play a little bit of Skull and Bones, but I've been sick. So when I started playing today, I just passed out for like 3 hours. And
Did you play a little bit beforehand, or is that kind of like?
No, I mean, I played when it was like first hit, and I did the intro, right? And then I just kind of stopped playing because I think I ended up going to play some multiplayer or something else or whatever. And then I kind of left it there. And today I was like, you know what? I have time. I'm going to sit there. I'm just going to try this game. And then 5 minutes later, I fell asleep. It's not because of the game. It's just because I've been sick. But so far, I mean, it's so early on. I can't give actually any feedback on it. But yeah, there's that. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink,
I heard that was really
awesome.
good.
It's very, very good. It's like the best classic style JRPG brought to modern times for me. But it still keeps it in the classic way, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas like Final Fantasy VII, like Rebirth and remaster or whatever, like part 1 and part 2, they're like really changing things for what that kind of game looks like and can be.
You mean like action RPG type thing, or
more about the looks and stuff?
Okay.
I love Remake, and I love and I'm sure I'm gonna love Rebirth because I love Remake, right? But they kind of pushing things so far, like to where it's like, oh, this is new, never been done before type things, where it's like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink feels more traditional to me,
Mm,
right? But modern still in a
okay.
way.
So
So I
you've
don't
been
know if
playing that
that's
more than the piratey game.
yes. Yeah, I've been playing that more. And then Enshrouded, which is that survival game
Well,
on PC. I'm actually gotta do a stream of that. So I'm gonna probably be doing that tomorrow, I think.
heck yeah.
Um
More
some
gaming
playing
streams. I
some
want to see
Enshrouded.
more Mavcasts. I think
Yeah.
my favorite Mavcast of yours is probably Hellblade because I kept bothering you to play Hellblade, and you
Yeah.
actually you enjoyed it more than I thought you would. Like I know I was like I liked it, but I'm glad you really liked that game too.
Yeah, I couldn't once I finally got past the beginning, I couldn't put it down. I ended up playing through the whole thing. That one
Yeah,
playthrough.
yeah. And Jasper was saying in chat, now you got to do a custom intro for every guest. Look, I thought about this. I was like, I'm having Mav come on, not sort of a last minute sort of thing, but I was like, I want to still do a cool sort of a intro, just to have in there, to have him. But maybe I'll do some pre animations for people that I want on the show. Maybe like 5 or 6 different animations, so when they come on, it's just they're shooting some zombies or something like that. We'll see. We'll see. And then we have everyone, Poison Maniac saying I should release the video. Here's the thing, again. So for backstory for people who are watching later or on demand, um, me and Mav have had this rivalry going on for a while.
It's so one sided though,
It is
man.
one
It's like
side. It is
this is
kind of,
like it's like beef. You ever watch the show Beef where like they
yeah,
keep getting
yeah.
back at each other? It's like it just stopped after the first thing, you know? Like
It
I
was
just
like,
like I got you, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna get you back, and then it just never happens.
yeah.
So if that's what you call rivalry, that's fine.
It's like a trailer to Beef, like, or 10 minute part of the episode where he does one thing. And yeah, I just went too ambitious with Mav's comeback video. I was trying to scan his face in 3D. I was like putting him in Unreal Engine 5. I was trying to do like add in all these different podcasters and special appearances and stuff. I don't know what I was just trying to one up him in this very extravagant way that I just ran out of time. But maybe one day, Mav, I'll get you back.
Yeah, it's been like 2 years, I think, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's been like 2 years.
It's
been a while.
maybe one day.
Maybe
Yeah, maybe
one day.
one day.
Hey, I animated you in the intro, so it's a start. It was
Yeah.
we were shooting some zombies together, so it could be a prerequisite to that maybe.
So the next one, you're gonna have a zombie come through and just eat my face or whatever, and then like flip off the screen.
Yeah, that'll be the end card for this show.
Yeah, and
I'll
it'll be a
do it.
guy riding on a pony, like a zombie riding on a pony.
I
Come
did
and
think
get me.
about putting some pony Easter eggs in there, like maybe some and I did think about you collecting like animal crackers or something. Thought it would be kind of fun.
That would be great.
Yeah, maybe what I'll do
Yeah.
for every season of the show, because I want to do like seasons. Um, every season just has like a crazy intro for my guest or something. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what we end up doing. But we have a first topic of this show. We can free flow this conversation a bit, but the first topic of the day is the Xbox official podcast. Now, this is interesting because we were kind of talking in the green room. Everyone in the Fun Spec fam, I feel like, had kind of a level-headed wait and see reaction to this, while a lot of people were kind of freaking out, saying Xbox is dead, this is the end, and people feeling betrayed by Phil. And not to say we weren't worried or anything like that. I was a bit in my feels when it started. But I wanted to stay in a mentality of just kind of watching. There's a lot of power to waiting rather than reacting emotionally. But I do feel like the Fun Spec fam has won a lot of battles just by waiting and keeping a level head about things. Not going with the crowd on issues like Xbox trying to increase the price of gold, which was confirmation, and we reacted negatively to it. We had some backlash in our own community because we are like, we don't want the price to increase on gold. So we stuck to our guns there. But after watching that podcast, some things have shifted in Xbox's strategy. ABK was, in my opinion, definitely an accelerant to their plans, more than I think anyone expected. Overall, where I stand with this, Mav, it generally just feels like this is where the industry is headed. Xbox has always been ahead in trying things. The public would usually bash them for it. People, they tend to not like change, and then PlayStation does usually the same thing when the noise sort of dies down, and then they get praised for it, like, oh, look what we did. It's happened since probably the Xbox One generation. I posted my personal thoughts on this on Twitter, basically saying, like, look, there are two parts for me. The main part for me, the most important part I care about, is the value proposition. How much can I get without spending a ton of money? I'm getting older. I can't play as much as I used to. So in terms of value proposition, Game Pass has that on lock for me. Besides Game Pass, it does ripple into other stuff I do care about. I love the ecosystem itself. If you didn't want to just play through Game Pass and wanted to just buy a game traditionally, Game Pass still supports that with like crazy discounts usually for these games. Love the controller. It's easy as heck to refund games. I was never able to actually refund a PlayStation game. It's just hard to do some of that stuff on other platforms. So if you've spent thousands already in one ecosystem, it's less likely you will leave that service unless that is where your friends go or something like that. So out of anything, the value is most important to me, and Xbox still provides that better than like any other competitor by far. And I can acknowledge that and then not like the messaging because these corporations are not your friends, right? You had the messaging of Phil saying we're not a third-party publisher, following it up by, I kind of get tired when people don't know where these games are going, or these games will go to places where Game Pass exists. All these different quotes that we would use in our shows to kind of define what Xbox's vision was. And obviously things are shifting, and Xbox is again defining a hint of the future, where PlayStation announced also that they're trying to reach more platforms that people are seemingly ignoring. So like Xbox is ahead of the curve. They've been on this multi-platform train since like 2013. It's accelerating. You know, you had Minecraft, one of the best-selling games on PlayStation for a while. They had Elder Scrolls. I think it was like on Switch or something like that. They've honored contracts with games like Deathloop, where it was missing on Xbox for a while. So my sentiment is this, and I want to hear your thoughts. Like I do wish they did wait a bit because they just got these companies, I feel like, and they haven't really had time to release anything with the companies they just acquired. It could be that people just need to start getting into a mindset that both PlayStation and Xbox, they're going multi-platform, and it's just an ecosystem preference at this point. So I have my thoughts on this, but I kind of want to bring the question to you, Mav. Do you feel like Xbox has messed up on marketing, or do you think this is just the future that we're all living in now, and we kind of need to accept it? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I feel like, and maybe I'm a little bit different in some of this stuff, but I honestly kind of feel like really it's not too different than what they were already doing. And when this news started getting out, it kind of snowballed into a bigger thing that they had to kind of address, right? In this kind of way. Whereas now it seems like this big thing. Whereas I think they honestly, and I agree, there is some changes there, maybe with more things than they had anticipated, especially all at once, because like there's 4 games within a short period of time, right?
Right.
But if you look at really overall what they've been doing over the last few years and what we kind of speculated on when they acquired ABK, like I was talking about like things that people wouldn't necessarily like to hear, right? Because
Yeah.
with ABK, I've always felt like that's more of a transformational acquisition as opposed to it's just adding. It's not additive, right? Like it's not like as MX Bethesda is more additive. All the other studios were more additive. But
Yeah.
when you acquire something that's like the same size business wise as you are in itself, right? It's more of like it's transforming your company in some ways. And the question was going to be, what is this new monster that Xbox is going to become? What do they do? What do they look like? And my like far off speculation, and we talked about this, we almost got into like debates on some of our shows back in the day,
Yeah.
was that like in the long term, if you really think about it from a business perspective, what is the difference for them between some of the when as these IPs and these games become more synonymous with Xbox, become more synonymous with Microsoft, when there's like less separation in our minds of like a Diablo or like a Call of Duty as opposed to Halo and Gears, right? When like 5, 10 years down the line, when we think of all of this as Microsoft Xbox titles, because
Yeah.
eventually that I mean that's what they want. They want those games to be synonymous with Xbox, right? As
Yeah.
much as anything else, because they spent $70 billion. So you look 5, 10 or years down the line, or even further, it's like, well, what at that point, looking at it from a numbers perspective and business wise, what is the difference for them, for the money crunchers, right? Between Halo, Gears, and Fable or all these other games, as opposed to the Call of Duties, the Diablos, and all those, as opposed to just which branch they come from under the Xbox umbrella. Because if they see these games are making so much more money than these other ones, they you start to think like, okay, well maybe they're just going to start doing the same thing as those other games, right? It just kind of makes sense if you
Yeah.
think of it long term business wise. I think there's a transition, right? There's
Yeah.
like a transition to become that and to do that is a long term thing to where it's because you don't want to just like throw away everything you worked on or did and stuff, but like they've already been making these moves in the past. Like
Yeah.
we've seen games go to the Switch, we've seen games go to PlayStation, right? We've seen PlayStation game come to Xbox now. We've seen lots of different stuff go on that's different. We see PlayStation making comments about how they keep needing to expand and all these other kind of things, right?
Yeah.
That like the writing's kind of on the wall long term. So the question for me has always been like, what do you enjoy about playing in the ecosystem, right? And if that doesn't change, then I have no problem with whatever they do. And that's kind of been my stance all along, is because
Yeah, you've been
I
pretty consistent on that. A lot of people, even me, I was like, "Whoa, whoa, what's going on?" What's going on here? But I think you've been pretty pretty consistent in saying um, that as long as they don't touch things about Game Pass, because that's where the value is for you and for me. Um, where a vision was sort of preached to me about Game Pass of what it was supposed to be, and I feel like it's been fitting that more so than other services right now. Um, but like yeah, a lot of people's mentality has been shifting. Like, oh, I feel like a lot of people in the community have been finding out what matters to them.
yeah,
Um, what matters to me, like I said in the beginning, is it's Game Pass. It's it's the ecosystem itself. I really enjoy being on the Xbox and I've been an Xbox gamer since I was like 12. So it's kind of just something I've been attuned to for a while. But yeah, go ahead. You can continue.
no, it's like you hit it on the head. Like, it's like, why do you like playing on Xbox, right?
Yeah.
And like for me, it's never been about like I only like Xbox because this game is here but not somewhere else. You know what I
Right.
mean? And yeah, that like I think that more than anything that helps like justify the mental aspect of your purchase, right? But if you take that away and somebody else gets the same experience, it didn't take necessarily anything away from you. It just made you less justifiable on having to own that product in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have other reasons why you wanted to own the product as opposed to just that game existing only there, then what's the difference, right? So I'm learning. I feel like that some people care more about the only like ecosystem because a game is only on that ecosystem, right? As opposed to like they just like the experience of it, you know?
Right.
And but it kind of I in a weird way I feel like it's like contradictory for a lot of people that are really upset because that's not what they've always been preaching about or been talking about. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
always been, and like also you look at the last several years before 2023, right, going into the future, like there was not a lot of great big time exclusives. You know what I mean on Xbox for a while, right? So if you
If you're
still
worried about
were
exclusives when they didn't have it for
right,
quite some
so if
time.
if if you were so ride or die, right, at that time and you were so ride or die at that time and preaching all this stuff and saying how amazing it is, how Game Pass is great, how everything's gonna be awesome, and all this kind of things like that. And all of a sudden, they take like four kind of not huge type games and put them somewhere else, and all of a sudden it's like that's it, I'm out of here. When now they're cooking and have all these great games coming and a lot more exclusives than they've ever had the last several years, it just doesn't compute with me, man.
Yo.
Like you're gonna a lot of these people that are like, I'm jumping ship, I'm gonna back out now. You've been through the trenches of the shit storm with Xbox for several years, right? And they are finally at a place where they're going to be giving you more awesome stuff than ever before. And the most important stuff that they laid out was that the ecosystem that they built out is not really changing. The Game Pass stuff, the cross progression, and all of those other kind of things. The ABK games are going into Game Pass day and date, all that kind of stuff. All of this stuff is going to be laid at our feet as Xbox gamers in the ecosystem that we've been saying that you love, right?
Yeah.
It's just gotten better, right? But because there's a chance that they might be putting some games other places as well, now all of a sudden it's worthless to you.
Yeah. That mentality
At
has
this
been.
time, now when we are getting all this stuff, like that's just like I can't fathom being it's that emotional about something like that, to
Mhm.
where I'm going to be having so much awesome stuff being like delivered to me for the game subscription going forward that these same people have been preaching about, to
Right.
now because somebody else gets to buy that game for more money or whatever, like somewhere else, now all of a sudden I'm out of everything going forward with Xbox.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that's
just
that's been
great.
the
I don't get it.
conversation. Something I'm starting to find out about a lot of people um in these content creation camps where they're preaching about what they like about Xbox, what they like about gaming and stuff. And is it the fact that these games are going to other platforms, or like what is it that people truly value? Because to me, it's not necessarily that exclusives are. It's not necessarily that all these games I'm getting are exclusives, etc. It is the ecosystem that I value. That's something I realized over the week. I do love exclusives. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for Halo, I don't think I would have been on Xbox. But I think what we're finding out over the week, a lot of people are like, "Oh, because my games are going to other platforms," and maybe you can answer this. Because all these games are going to other platforms, this somehow devalues my experience. And people get into the conversation of like, oh, well, because Hi-Fi Rush is going to PlayStation, what this can do is cause a ripple effect that will lead to no more consoles. That's, if you want to talk about that, that's the constant thing I keep hearing
Yeah.
from people is like, oh, because Hi-Fi Rush, this devalues the console, which means in the future Xbox is no longer gonna have a console. I do want to hear your thought on that before I say what my thought is on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
From the like get go, this has been the main thing that this is all about
Yeah.
because that's the reason why people freak out in the first place. But like people are jumping off a bridge at the threat of something like that's so small, right? That they're just ready to leap, and they potentially with the reaction are the maybe the cause of the scenario as opposed to like the action itself, right? Like if it's like you cause a somebody says something's going to happen, right? Then all of a sudden 10 other people say it's going to happen. 20 other people say it's going to happen. Then 1,000 people say something's going to happen. Then 50,000 people say something's going to happen, right? All of a sudden you get enough people believing something, right? It makes enough people lose faith in it. That has can have some really dramatic effects as opposed to the fact that maybe this was never going to happen in the first place,
Right.
so and we've seen that damage Xbox before in the past with the um, kind of community and the abandoned ship mentality going from Xbox 360 to Xbox One. So like when I saw my main thing is like when I've been getting like amped up a little bit about this whole thing is about I don't want to see that happen again because that did more damage to Xbox last generation than anything, right?
Yeah.
Like this
More than
now
I
I'm not
thought it
gonna
would back in the
yeah
day.
like
Um,
it's pretty crazy because and now at the end of the day the fault still lies on Xbox for not understanding how to message properly or like do all these kind of things in the right ways to make sure that all of this stuff is laid out properly to where people don't have this crazy anxiety over the brand. Like
mhm.
if this many people are ready to like abandon ship because they have this anxiety over Xbox, that's a problem. And it means that your messaging and the confidence in the brand isn't strong. So they got to fix that. But it doesn't mean that necessarily it's not what I would do putting a game somewhere else, right? But it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that that's not the right answer in the long term if we actually look ahead to the future. I don't know. I would keep things exclusive because I want that I'm more competitive like that. Like, and I feel like they're leaving stuff on
Yeah.
the table.
I
But
always say I would be
overall,
Darphil in a lot
yeah.
of these cases. Yeah.
But I'm not emotional over it. You know what I mean? Like I don't really care. But like business wise, if I was looking at it, I'd be looking at what's possible to gain in more in the console space still, where I think they've given up a little bit on that and they're more accepting.
Right.
So going back to your question though about hardware, right? Like the fear of hardware, was that like jumping off the bridge, the like far stretch, like worst case scenario thing that where people just had this one rumor, these couple rumors start spreading. All of a sudden, it's worst case scenario. This is going to happen, So get out now, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it just never made any damn sense. And it's just because of common sense, rational thinking about what Xbox and Microsoft is now. They
Yep. They
they
have
are
so many titles
they
coming.
freaking massive, and people still haven't been able to wrap their head around this. And they're not little brother Xbox or like third place Xbox anymore. Like if you talk about console space, yes, but like in the business, no, it's not them anymore. Like they are monster in gaming. They have acquired like the largest gaming publisher, third party publisher,
I just
as
find this
an added.
interesting that a lot of people, I've seen several posts where people said, I'm gonna sell my Xbox and then I'm gonna go to PlayStation to buy Hi-Fi Rush. And I'm just like, first off, Xbox already has
Yeah,
Hi-Fi Rush on Game Pass. You don't even have to fully, pay for it if you don't want. If you have the subscription, if you value subscriptions like that, then cool. Or you can buy a console and a $70 or however much it costs. I just find people's takes to just be very emotionally driven. Uh,
It's
and
not
jump
business.
ship.
It's not logical thinking driven. Like you think about the logical thinking thing, right?
Hmm.
They comparative to other platforms, right? You talk about faith in the ecosystem. Okay,
Yep.
and if you compare to PC, PC is always going to win because it's an open platform, right?
Yep.
Do anything. So that's inherently always going to win. You can
That's probably
emulate.
the
You can,
one platform that makes sense.
but
If
right,
people said like I'm gonna leave the Xbox, go to PC, which I think like Fuzzy and a few people in our community
yeah.
have, like I understand that.
But
I
that's just
completely
saying
get it.
you're leaving done with console gaming. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
like it's not about Xbox at that point. It's just like you're done with consoles, right?
Right.
And like at the end of the day, Microsoft's okay with that too. Like if you're playing on PC. So overall, do I think hardware's going away? No. And the reason is because there's a lot of people that like playing on console, right?
Right.
And they have a massive ecosystem, right? And they know that the hardcore console gamers, this people like us, spend the most money also on gaming. And it's not just because of the console; they have a high attach rate. They like do all these different things. They spend a lot of money on playing, even if it's just one game that they play, right?
Mm.
Like you spend a lot of money on microtransactions, or how many people just play Call of Duty or whatever. A lot of people just like buying a console and put it on their TV, right? Do
Yep.
they just want to abandon the ability to have a gate kept storefront to those gamers out there that want that? No, because they have more stuff to sell you than ever before. Like
Yep.
they get all the microtransactions from Call of Duty now. They get all of that stuff,
They
right?
get the people bragging about like the Call of
So
Duty bundles. You know
so
that.
you're gonna tell me they're gonna abandon 30 million access points of storefronts now just because? Like, think logically, people. You really think they're just gonna say, "Oh, you know what? All of that money no longer matters to us." And then you also think about, okay, well, people say, well, the R&D and all these kind of things. They like that is such a small fraction compared to the monster that Xbox is now.
Right.
They actually have more ability to do a bunch of different stuff than they've ever done before and try and put their storefront into lots of different people's hands, right? They put their stuff in other places because they understand that they're never going to move those consumers to Xbox, right? Like Steam, they're not going to move those people over, right?
Right.
You talk about PlayStation, yeah, a lot of people they're not going to be able to move over, right? So they're starting to kind of dabble in all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of gamers that like playing on an Xbox console, that like the ecosystem, and there's millions and millions and millions of them, even if it's not as many as PlayStation, even if it's not as many as Nintendo. And we like to spend money on video games, and they don't want to say, no, we don't want your business. No, we're
Yeah.
good. Yeah, we don't want your business. That's so like such a far stretch. Like,
Yeah.
why would that's just like saying no, we don't want your money. Like, they if it wasn't tied to storefronts and it was just about the hardware itself, and they're making profit on hardware they think it was going to sell, then like yeah, you could make an argument for that. But
Mhm.
like not when these boxes are made to be access points to have us spend shit tons of money on stuff,
I
right?
think the more I thought about it, um, the first coming from a perspective that the most played games are third party games, right? That's just
Yeah,
the first thing. Where if you always look at the NPD, it's not uh it's not exclusives generally. It's Call of Duty, it's Fortnite, it's FIFA, all these different things, right? So most played games are third party games. And then you come from a baseline of understanding that when Xbox is thinking about these decisions, the baseline experience is what they start with. So the people who you know are going to play or buy this platform, and then they're trying to build from that. And I feel like they still consider consoles as a part of that market. You can't just get rid of the console market right now and just be like, hey, we
yeah,
still got PlayStation users. There's a risk to just having PlayStation dictate your ecosystem when you're trying to build Game Pass. there's a risk to just leaving it to Nintendo. Like, let's say, like, oh, we left the console business. At least we got this. If you're building up Game Pass as your model, as something that is important, it makes sense to have an ecosystem that is tied to that, which is console, PC, mobile. If you get rid of one of those pillars, then you can kind of expect those subscribers to go down with it a lot, at least a big portion of that. I don't think they want that. So when people are kind of saying that by putting games on other platforms, they are going to get rid of, like, they're no longer going to make consoles. In the beginning, when I first heard about all these games, their whole slate, because these were the rumors, it was like every single game, Halo, Gears of War, all these different games going to other platforms. I was in the sentiment, like, I'm always Darth Phil. Like, if I was running Xbox, my sentiment would be like, nah, y'all not getting any of these games. I'll give you maybe Call of Duty, but Overwatch 3 exclusive. Everything kind of exclusive. But the more I'm sort of seeing the industry and where it's headed with PlayStation and Xbox, where it's becoming not console wars, it's more so ecosystem wars at this point. Because PlayStation is going on PC most likely day one in a couple of years. Xbox has always been on PC since Xbox One generation. I feel like this priorities are shifting, and I know a lot of people are not going to agree with it because whenever a change happens, people reject it. And Microsoft, unfortunately, are usually the sorry for the phone, the first kind of like company to do stuff like that. But kind of speak to that. Do you think that it's a bad thing to start putting multi-platform games on other? Do you feel like there's like a consequence to that could lead to I don't know, the console dying in the future? Do you think that could be a ripple effect? I personally don't think so. I just feel like all of them are headed towards this ecosystem where you could play Xbox on your TV, you could play it on your mobile. But what do you think?
I think long term, just like hardware is going to go wherever technology takes it, like, and Microsoft will be at the forefront of that, right? So, because they're always early with everything. So if they are the first to get out of the console space, it's because they've achieved so much in the ecosystem to be at a place where the console's no longer relevant first, potentially, right? But like, that's still a long ways away, I think, because there's still dedicated players, right? We're already seeing digital become more and more of a thing. Retailers are going away from physical media. Phil was in an interview the other day and talked about, like, it's even hard because disk drives, hardly anybody makes them anymore. You know what I mean? So like, just they're like video game consoles are like the last hurrah kind of like popular devices that have drives in them like that, So it's like, I think going forward, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But like, technology and the advancement of it and the adoption from consumers is always going to be what kind of dictates what those companies end up doing. And Microsoft will be ahead of the game there. So that's going to dictate really what they do in the console space more than what they're decided to do today or yesterday or whatever. Doesn't have much relevance to their decisions in the future about how to make money off of this, right? It's just a transition. It's like a slow transition process, and they're trying to figure out like how to make the most out of the things that they have today. And they still are obviously have value in exclusives. Otherwise, they would have just said, "Hey, whole slate, everything's going multi-plat," all that kind of stuff. It, like, they could do that, right? It would cause mass hysteria, right? They could be the first out of the gates, so like, everything's day and date everywhere. We're just gonna, be a multi-platform publisher, and we're still gonna make Xboxes. But no, they still see the value in exclusivity, and I feel like the messaging kind of got crazy a little bit.
Yeah, the messaging got a little weird. I do feel like I wonder what they're looking for from these 4 games.
I don't know. That's why I won't do it.
That's kind of what I'm wondering, because if you have if consoles are the smallest gamer base, this was my logical thinking, because I really do wonder in this interview that is on the screen right now what they're looking for. Because if you have four games, all with different sort of ranges of fan bases, I guess I would say Pentiment's probably the smallest
Mm-hmm.
one, and consoles are the smallest gamer base. Um, Out of PC, mobile, stuff that Xbox is starting to reach towards more and more every single year. What exactly is the point? That's my thinking
I
of
have
it.
I have my theory,
Yeah.
right? I have my theory. Is that because even if you're a monster like they are now, right? You have all these individual aspects. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take everything under a microscope and you look at individual aspects, like if I'm looking at in my job and I'm looking at what's costing me money or what's the problem? Am I not charging enough here? Am I not charging enough there? Or why am I like, why is this one aspect not as profitable as it could be,
Right.
right? And I think a lot of their decisions right now are trying like, and again, I'm not advocating for this, right? 'Cause like I said, I think they're leaving bigger gains on the table
Yep.
because I think there's more if they did just gatekeep everything, especially with the next generation and the next several years when this pipeline drops, I think they could have made more gains in the console space than they're counting on, right?
Right.
But I'm just trying to look at it from their perspective and trying
Yeah.
to figure out
I'm
what they're thinking,
trying to.
right?
Yeah.
So I think their thinking is okay, so let's look at okay, this like passion project Pentiment that Josh Sawyer did. It cost us this much money. It made this much money. Uh that's not really that great, right? He wants more people to play it anyway, so why not just go ahead and put it somewhere else so that way we maybe can do another one of those games in the future and not call it a loss, right?
Right.
Because they're looking at things as a microscope. Now, I think it's a mistake because I think that adds value to Game Pass and the ecosystem as a whole, right? That drives people in as opposed to say, well, we don't need it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that comes in. But I think that's their thinking, right? And then they're looking at okay, let's say they look at Hi-Fi Rush, maybe a similar situation, highly rated game, right? Uh, Another kind of passion
Pretty new
project
too.
type game that like really killed it in ratings and people love the game, but doesn't have a huge audience, right? So they're looking at okay, well, how can we get the most return for this banger that we dropped or whatever, and make it to where we can do more of those, you know. Then like they look maybe with something like Grounded, they're just looking at it like, okay, well, this is like meets kind of grown as to a point now to where it's only going to have slow growth on Xbox and PC now going forward. How can we get more players? And they thought that, the I guess the Switch would be a great fit for it, right?
Yeah.
And so they're
See.
like, okay, let's get those people. And then Sea of Thieves, they're probably like, I don't know. Like Sea of Thieves is the interesting one because that's the one that like that's the biggest franchise I think that they did with this because Sea of Thieves I think has become a synonymous franchise with Xbox, right?
Yeah. That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Uh,
So just because that one was like the one I'm like, I really don't think they should have done that, you know.
mm,
Uh, and I know it makes sense like games of service wise to get as many players as you can, but I look at it like that was a big draw to the Xbox ecosystem for a long time, and you just kind of gave away one of your like best things you've had going for the last several years, right?
right.
So yeah, it's gonna help the game and help Rare, right? And maybe help them like maintain profitability or grow going forward. But I think that was like out of all of them, I'm looking at that one. I'm like, yeah, that one was you like I wouldn't have done any of them, But at the end of the day, like they had their reasons, and I think each one of them was for like different specific reasons that like where they're looking at things under a microscope and making decisions without really considering more about the long-term effects from this enough,
Right.
right? And maybe that is the biggest detriment, but I don't think it's going to have any impact on hardware whatsoever.
Yeah,
Hardware will not be impacted by any of this stuff. It's just going to be impacted by where technology goes.
yeah, I agree. I think where with this 4 games, I constantly question, like, I really tried to get into their headspace of like, okay, if consoles are the smallest base of where these players are, and Poison Maniac, he mentioned something. I'll actually will pull up this picture. This little picture here. Let me see if I move this around. Um, where it kind of talks about the range of exclusives, where they have like Redfall and Starfield in the middle, and then on the sides they talk about like what games they consider a higher value of exclusives, a lower value. So you take all this into consideration, their court case of how much they battled to make sure that they talked about exclusives because they still wanted to have it in the future.
And that graphic's outdated now. I think Redfall would probably slide to the left or the right.
Probably. it's like evolving before our eyes, sure. I think. And yeah, it does get to an interesting conversation of like what their plans are, because I still do think they value exclusives. Now, to what level, I do feel like it really depends on the IP. With because these 4 games, I know Phil was basically saying, don't expect an avalanche of Xbox titles coming after this. But really, I don't know. I feel like just because of these 4 games, they're kind of a testing ground. We'll see how well they sell. Maybe that's what they're looking for. Like, if we put these games on other platforms, how much money or an ROI can we get? I feel like it won't be as much as they're possibly thinking.
I agree. Now, maybe Sea of Thieves becomes like PlayStation's big multiplayer hit, you know? I don't think it's happening, but, you know, it's possible. I don't know how much Minecraft sells on like PlayStation or some of the other games.
I mean, Minecraft sells pretty dang well.
Well, everywhere, but
I expected Hi-Fi Rush to be on Switch, but now that I think about it, that game really depends on being 60 frames per second for the music, because you're like playing to the beat.
Yeah.
Switch can't. I don't think Switch. I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Do you think a lot of PlayStation guys are going to buy Hi-Fi Rush?
I mean, I
think they might. I don't know.
I mean, they're saying they're going to buy it now.
Well, it's like $30, right?
Yeah, it's like 30. I think I saw it was like 30.
I think it's gonna do no. I think it's gonna surprise on there and do better than some of us.
Than an Xbox, you think?
I don't know if it's gonna do better than Xbox. I guess it's possible because of Game Pass, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about player count or sales, right? Because
which one is more important to the ecosystem? Because Xbox loves the player count because they want more Game Pass subscribers. Where PlayStation, they're just like, let's get that money up front.
Yeah, so it's hard. I don't know. I think it's going to make them a lot of money though. It will help. It'll help Tango ultimately, right? Because it'll establish more value to Tango GameWorks within Microsoft. Like,
so you think out of all the games, though, Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves probably will get a lot of players on PlayStation.
It's like Sea of Thieves is Sea of Thieves is a weird one because like it has such a big name, but like just don't see a lot of PlayStation guys like getting into multiplayer games like that. Like there's more Call of Duty and sports games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they're trained so much to like the single player stuff. So I think Hi-Fi Rush has better chance on PlayStation. Sea of Thieves I think is going to get some players, but I don't know, man. Maybe. Like, really, honestly, though, it might be the best multiplayer game on PlayStation. So maybe that will be...
maybe that'll be like a...
Right. Like,
a good catalyst.
Or built around community and, like, getting people together. And maybe this will... Maybe that will be it. I don't know. But that's just... playing a lot of games like that. You know, Xbox has a lot of co-op oriented, you know, multiplayer...
I mean, they finally did get some multiplayer game, Helldivers 2. I think it did okay on the PlayStation, right?
Yeah, but
I guess
that's
that's a
doing like
test.
it's yes, but it's doing like 10 times as good on PC than
Yeah,
PlayStation, right? So like
yeah.
yeah, it's doing okay on PlayStation. It's doing good on PlayStation, but not like you would expect with the player count on PlayStation for as good of a multiplayer game as it is.
Yeah, if it was it
That
50 million consoles that they
right,
said.
like that's why I look at it like because that game, if that came out, Helldivers 2, and it was on Xbox right now, like the Xbox numbers would be absolutely astronomical,
I mean, we're
right?
seeing Power World, which is not talked about enough, in my opinion, but that game is still doing some crazy
Yeah,
numbers.
like a little Power World is a good example because it's multiplayer, but it's also you can play single player too. But the amount of players in the from Xbox is really high, and then they keep posting the numbers like the developers do, and it's like a lot of Xbox players in there. Not as many
Yeah,
as PC, but it's kept up more with way more than PC. But like I think the Helldivers game has been like if there's 400,000 people playing, it's like 330,000 are playing on PC,
yeah, yeah. It's
something
insane.
like that, or like it's around like 50K to a little bit more usually on PlayStation, as the rest is usually PC,
But
so
that's kind of why a lot of people are thinking PlayStation from now on is just gonna go to PC. For most of their
well,
games, stay in
they
date.
should for their multiplayer stuff
They really should for their multiplayer stuff. Um,
because they like I don't know it's, when they have it. Look at Foam Stars, like when they have games that are only on PlayStation, right? That are multiplayer oriented like that, they usually don't succeed.
yeah, I think I've
Um,
seen a list of just different PlayStation games that are multiplayer that either the mode was so underplayed, like Ghost of Tsushima, that people forgot that it
yeah,
was even in there, or the game just would drop in support like weeks, months later.
yeah,
So this is a test case for PlayStation. Like, what if you had a pretty good game, like a successful game, day and date on PC? I always had the mentality if you release a game on PC and console at the same time, the PC audience tends to respect that. Because
yeah.
whenever PlayStation released a game months later, years later, it would never sell as well on PC, like a God
Well,
of
the
War.
excitement over it's gone, and a lot of the people, if they really cared at that point, they would end up finding a way to play it on a console somewhere or whatever. You know what I mean? But like,
Yeah,
you release a day and date, people are going to play on where they prefer to play on. You know,
yeah, yeah.
so
Facts.
PC is great for Helldivers. That's where I've been playing it. And you know, I just I do think that they need to invest more multiplayer stuff, and but I think that they've got to do PC day and date. Like, and we had talked about
Yeah,
this numerous times
facts.
before on our shows, like Helldivers. I was hoping it would succeed on PC and they would learn from it,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
think that's what's happening now,
Yeah,
right?
because in their documents they talked about the premium model, and how they couldn't really necessarily compete with Xbox at the level they're doing it because it doesn't make sense for them financially, like where they are. So
Yeah,
what they wanted to do was cater to a. They wanted to cater to a premium model, like having people familiarize their IPs with PlayStation and their ecosystem. So when you think about God of War, you think about God of War within the PlayStation, not necessarily on other stuff. So that way they'll release the game later, a year later on PC, and it doesn't damage their look or what have you. So that was in the Insomniac documents. If you guys, I know a lot of
yeah.
media didn't want to talk about it, but they do go into wanting to eventually expand outside of that and start releasing games on other platforms such as PC. And when he says, the CEO said the other day, I
PC
guess it
and
was
other
other
platforms.
PC and
But
other platforms. What do you think? What do you think the other platforms? What does that
I
mean, Matt?
think
What do you think
I
that
think they're
means?
keeping an open mind about putting some of their games other places. Like we've already seen. Okay, so
What
the,
other places? What are you thinking?
who knows? Xbox, Nintendo, like it could be Apple, like
Hmm.
with their like storefront, how they're doing, would be able to play like console quality type games now, like with the Resident, they show like Resident Evil and stuff like that. Like they could be talking about more cloud oriented like services, like um partners with like Nvidia or anything. I feel like they're looking and keeping an open mind to all possibilities, right? And you got to look at it from like their perspective. I mean, I think they've kind of known that they're kind of cemented in this console space with kind of what they are, and they
Right.
don't think that Xbox is really going to move the needle too much against them, especially with the comments that they've been making. So I feel like they're kind of just going to be brash and figure out a way to make most of the money that they can on some of these games. And it'll be interesting to see what happens if they do put like a big, like one of their franchise games, right, on another platform,
Yeah.
you know? Like even if it's like Last of Us Part 1 comes out on the new Switch,
That would be
right?
insane.
Or like
But it
on
feels
an
like you're
Xbox or
avoiding
something. I
the
mean,
Xbox a little bit
no,
in your statement.
I feel like it's possible. I feel like it's possible.
Hmm.
I think the one that I think they would make the most money on
Right.
is Helldivers, and they know
Yeah.
it's not going to really move the needle for them on console too much because their console players aren't even really playing it anyway. You
They
know,
haven't been
like
attuned. They've been attuned for so long to certain
yeah.
genres of games. So
So it would be interesting to see like a future where Helldivers comes out and other things. Like if it does or doesn't, I don't care because I'm playing it anyway on PC. But because a lot of people say, "Oh, you're port begging," or "You're port begging," blah, blah. But I think Helldivers would do numbers on Xbox because Xbox is a place where people play multiplayer games, right? Like people
yeah,
play a lot of multiplayer stuff, people play a lot of co-op stuff, and that's just kind of what the audience like PlayStation's audience has been trained to
it wasn't until the
like the single player
PlayStation
stuff.
4 that people. I feel like people forget this. It wasn't until the PlayStation 4 that PlayStation even got a party chat.
Yeah.
So they were kind of behind in a lot of different
Oh, and
like
they kept
ecosystems.
trying multiplayer shit failing. Like
Yeah,
over and over and over again, you
Halo
know?
killers after Halo killers. So,
Yeah.
as they would
Tons,
say.
tons of things that they tried to get in the multiplayer space back then, and like everything failed. There was some good experiences, that they made, but they didn't really take off player base wise.
They figured out some things PlayStation has done very well is figure out what they're good at and kind of stuck to it. But I feel like they are starting to realize they need to
Yeah.
adapt a little bit because
Yeah.
they make some. Yeah, go ahead.
Jasper said in the chat, more Xbox people bought Helldivers than PS people. I probably that's probably true. Like on PC.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that actually. I
Yeah, because
100% believe
it's
that.
a game that more like is appealing to Xbox gamers than PlayStation guys. I'm just being real.
Yeah,
That's 100% what it is.
and I know
Um,
people will say the port begging thing, but I just genuinely feel the same. Like I think the two different fan bases with between Xbox, PlayStation, what they're usually catering to, because you have to consider the casual base of players usually play the same games. We talked about it before.
yeah,
They play Call of Duty, they play FIFA, all these different games. But then you start sectioning it off to hardcore gamers and what they usually play within that ecosystem. And PlayStation has over time cemented these are the type of experiences that we want to bring to you, these premium single player story based dad simulator type games, which I love, by the way. It was a dig, but it was also I love those games. Then with Xbox, you're getting kind of a variety of like RPGs, multiplayer type experiences with Xbox. But since like early Xbox 360 days, they have cemented like this a very good multiplayer system that they've been setting up for so long. Um, that it's like in their fan base. Like if you remember the old days of Call of Duty, they were basically where people would scream in lobbies and stuff. All that was just known to be on Xbox. All the toxic sort of people in multiplayer, not really PlayStation as much. So it's still, I feel like it's still in um today's consoles. where people just have this mentality towards certain games, playing on different platforms. So I feel like Helldivers would do really good on Xbox, but we'll see if they go that route. I think when he says different platforms, I think he can mean Switch, Xbox.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to mention because a lot of people say, "Oh, he just means PC," so that doesn't make sense with his statement. He's like PlayStation and PC and then PC again. Like clearly he's not talking about PC. He could be talking about mobile. But then I think
Yeah.
I would have to relook at his statement. But from what I know,
I don't think, and I don't think it's like an announcement that this is going to happen necessarily. I think it's just
right,
like they have an open mind about possibilities right now.
more
You know
so
what I
than
mean?
before. That's
Yeah, and certain titles you could look at, maybe that you could see them doing that, especially their multiplayer games, like going forward. And they are, Marathon is coming to other platforms, right? It's coming to Xbox, right? So, um, that's already a part of it. Like they're gonna have Marathon on Xbox. They have MLB the Show every year in Game Pass right now as well. And I think that, like Phil said, 5 to 10 years in the future, you're gonna see those exclusive things that are meant to drive people to the ecosystems become less and less, right? He didn't say they're going to go away, but he said you're going to see those maybe become less and less, right? And
right.
I kind of agree with that. Like, I think you're still going to have a couple here and there, like two or three, maybe, hopefully per year. But like the Xbox has like 10 things releasing this year. They said,
Yeah.
so like, and going in the future, how, like, and a lot of the stuff that they have this year's already multi-plat. Also, like you talk about Call of Duty, like Diablo expansion, Starfield. Well, Starfield's,
Oh yeah, is Diablo this year? That
yeah.
expansion? That's this year?
I think the Diablo
Or
expansion is this year. I'm pretty sure. If
wow.
not, this is next year. But the Diablo expansion, they have Call of Duty. They have Overwatch stuff. I mean, all the different things they have. Like, there's a lot that's like multi-plat. Then you have like your exclusive thing, like the Starfield expansion. I was like, okay, that's coming. You have Age of Mythology, right? It's coming. It's exclusive. Flight Sim, Avowed,
Yeah.
Hellblade 2,
Indiana Jones.
Indiana
That's
Jones, right?
yeah.
You have a lot of exclusives, but you also have a lot of multiplats. So
I feel like yeah, that to end this topic, I feel like Xbox has a ton coming this year. 4 games is a test bed for them. We'll see if that is successful. Just based off what we know as podcasters and just me being in the industry, I feel like we'll see how well that does. I consoles are the smallest base, so when you expand your games to that platform, I feel like it does more hurt because now everyone's just expecting like, oh, I'll just wait to play it on PlayStation. That sort of narrative. But at the end of the day, all these people that's kind of like crying about Xbox and selling it and throwing it in the trash and stuff, um, figure out what you value as a gamer in general. Is it that the fact that all these games are coming to other platforms? To me, it's the ecosystem. It's the value of Xbox. It has always been the value of Xbox of how they've treated me over the years. It's always been great. I've always loved their discounts. I love their what Game Pass provides me, controller, a bunch of things I love about the Xbox ecosystem. Until they start changing stuff within, let's say they start messing with Game Pass, they're like, oh well, now it's getting too expensive. Let's start changing up Game Pass. That's when I would have more to say negatively. But other people getting 4 games, that's that doesn't really affect me. But I that's just what I think. I think you really figure out what you value as a gamer. If it really is other people getting your games, maybe you need to either reassess your priorities, or maybe you're worried because fear is just a lack of understanding. So maybe it's what's going to happen in the future. Where you're saying like, oh, maybe consoles won't exist anymore because they're devaluing the platform. I don't think that's going to happen. I they're still making other consoles. They still need a baseline of expectation for their business to even work. baseline of expectation, guess what, is still console. So we'll see. Not to say that people can't be disappointed. I get that. Phil has said a lot of things where us on this panel on FSP and other things we've used as a way to prove what Xbox's vision is, what Xbox is going to be in the future. We based off of what Phil said. Hey, you can expect games to go where Game Pass exists. Like, okay, that makes sense. But we're starting to see these games are going where Game Pass doesn't exist. So you're like, okay, well, that is a different strategy that needs to be explained to me. So I understand. That's why I separate it into two mindsets. One, you can't trust any big company. Out of the three companies, Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox by far provides the best value for me. So that's how I look at it. 100%. But the media aspect, that's a different conversation. Does that bother you enough where you're just like, you can't trust Xbox as a brand? Sure, I can see how that can be a concern. It's not really a concern for me. Any lasting thoughts on that, Matt, before we move on to the next topic?
The community aspect to this, more so that, and this has caused a lot of infighting and stuff within the community and podcasters and people talking crap about each other and all this kind of stuff, right? Seen weird stuff go on with comments being made, just like weird digs at people out of nowhere. And, you know, like we're going to have our fun and we can tease and kind of joke around about things and stuff. Like I've made fun and joked about the inside information and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like it's funny stuff because like we don't know what any of these people actually knew or whatever. But at the end of the day, to go after people because they don't feel the way you feel about something, like that's where it's like, really, you know, like we're gonna attack somebody because they're not as upset as you are. You know what I mean about this? Are you gonna go attack somebody because they are upset? You know what I mean about some of this stuff? It's like people just gotta learn to accept that other people care about different things, and not everything is like as important to them. Doesn't mean they're less of a gamer or care less. It just means they care. It's not necessarily the certain aspects of the things are the same things that they care about. Like for me, I could care less about exclusivity because I don't play on Xbox because those games aren't somewhere else. I just love the experience, the overall experience, right? So I'm not personally emotional over it. I think it's bad business, you know, but it doesn't affect me emotionally, right? But I understand that there are people that it affects them emotionally, you know. And if you're emotional about it, one way or the other, you get to the point where you start attacking people a lot of times because they don't have the same views that you do, right? Over this kind of things. At the end of the day, none of our fucking opinions matter because we're not the ones running these
trillion dollar
corporations, right? And they're going to make money off of us and they're going to try and milk us as much as they possibly can to grow their business and line the pockets of the shareholders and the board of directors.
All three, by the way.
Executives and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, that's just what their job is. It's a business, you know? And we're the consumers and their job is to make it as cool as possible for us to want to spend that money. And for me, nothing has changed with Xbox and the ecosystem except added value with all of this stuff going on, right? In the midst of all of these things, 3-bit. The midst of all these things about 4 games going away and all this kind of stuff. We just learned that all ABK games are coming to Game Pass day 1 going forward. Right? As a consumer, if you care about yourself and your value and what you're going to be doing and enjoying, you're saying that I'm out when you just learned that? Like, what is bigger? Right? And nobody's talking about that. Because that was a possible question. Like, what were they going to do with that? You know,
Mhm.
We learned they're doubling down on the ecosystem that they've built going forward, including everything from ABK, day and date into Game Pass going forward, which includes Call of Duty. And that is way bigger for me personally and
Yep.
gets me excited about
Yeah, me too.
future because I'm a cheap ass and they just save me money.
Same.
Save me money. Thank
That's how
you.
I look at it. Yeah. I hope prototype and stuff is in there. I'm sure it will be. I'm looking forward to prototype. Hope the Tony Hawk games are in there as well. But overall, yeah, I'm really excited about that. And the way I think about it, it's like you think you have these three corporations. You have Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. You're like, oh, I'm going over to PlayStation. I'm like, okay. You think they're also a billion-dollar company who really be greedy sometimes with their services. They don't even have half their games that they've made on their actual service on PS Plus or anything. Like, you think they're going to treat you any better? Like, okay. So that's how I look at it. Like,
Nintendo has the
Nintendo.
worst business practices out of all of them. I
Yeah.
mean,
So if we really want to go there, you can
I
go
mean,
to these. You feel betrayed. I feel you. I'm going to go to Nintendo or PlayStation. Like, all right. You know.
Nintendo's selling that Switch for the same price that it came out with way back then, and it is like so outdated hardware wise and scope, and it was even from the get go, right?
Yo.
How much profit they're making per game, and then they go and their prices never drop on their games. They hardly ever have any sales on any of their first party stuff, any of that. Then they also have things like with Animal Crossing where you can only have like one freaking like
Like
island per
Island or
Switch.
something.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous stuff, man. And then they even had the audacity to jump on the $70 train with like something running on a Switch. Like nothing ever on that device should be over $40 in my opinion. Like
Yeah.
it's just like it is. They're so outdated, like with what the AAA kind of is with gaming.
Yeah.
That, but now that doesn't mean they're not great games. They're not great games. Just they're built for less spec hardware that's less capable, right? So why should we pay the same price for something on that than something that looks like
I mean,
Starfield and is as
yeah.
expansive and ambitious as Starfield? You know what I
People
mean?
used to have them.
Like,
Do you remember people having the mentality that, like, oh, if a game is more, it shouldn't have microtransactions? Do you remember that being a thought
yeah,
in people's brain? But
yeah,
now it's just like, oh, it's 70 and it can have whatever.
yeah, yeah. The sports games were the worst,
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
it is what it is. All right, so we got our second topic. And I was really thinking about adding this is because we went through this a little bit with when we were talking about integrity in media. Because I wanted to talk about this because I feel like me and you have a unique perspective on places like IGN consistently forgetting to put Xbox in their articles and then basically gaslighting people. Like Jasper saying like, "Oh, it was a mistake. You have no idea how hard it is," or whatever they end up saying. You have their miscoverage of Hogwarts Legacy because they didn't like J.K. Rowling. Ended up being the most sold game of last year. You wouldn't know because the media almost refuses to report on it. The spoiling of the ending of Suicide Squad, publishing hate article after hate article on that game because the game wasn't what they wanted it to be. While a game like Foam Star took so long to get an actual review after its release. So my question is this: it does relate to integrity and the media. Do you feel like the media and journalism still has a place in gaming? And what would you do to make it better if you do?
I think it could. I think the wrong places are popular, right? And I
Right.
think they've kind of, they sold out a long time ago, right? To just drive for the masses and attention and clicks, and they've lost any kind of like responsibility or integrity of journalism, right? For the sake of just entertainment and clicks. It's business, right? The big sites are the ones that are going to be the worst with that stuff.
Right.
And I feel like overall, There's added stuff that you get some cool things. You get early looks at things. You get sometimes unique perspectives at stuff like you know. But it's lost a lot of value for me personally with like big games media. I hardly ever look at anything from big games media anymore unless it's like a first look at something I'm actually excited about that they had access to because of who they are, right?
Right.
The sites that have the most integrity and actually responsibility to the game to games and what they're supposed to be passionate about aren't as popular, and that's kind of like unfortunate, right? But I feel like overall, um, there's really no fixing what games media has become now. I think it's just an overall shit show, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is just personal feelings and agendas and biases that are just uh kind of run rampant, and it's like doesn't really necessarily represent what gamers want or are about anymore.
Yeah.
There's examples like with Suicide Squad, and whether you like Suicide Squad or don't like Suicide Squad, the same thing happened with Starfield, and the same thing happens with other games where it's like they just kind of get piled on. And Suicide Squad was one that was interesting because it's not a exclusive, or it's not like a big platform
No.
exclusive or anything like that. So I'm drawing attention to this one because it rules out the Xbox tax or like the
This talks about bias
just
in general.
in general, right? Leaving the platforms out of it, right?
Yep.
To show what can kind of happen. And I honestly feel like there's two different worlds that could have happened with Suicide Squad.
Mm-hmm.
There's a world where we saw the initial like gameplay reveal and stuff, and that's when the negativity started, right? When we got the original gameplay reveal.
Yep.
And we didn't have a history of Rocksteady in our minds. We didn't have a history of the Arkham series in our minds, right? We see all that, and we're like, oh, this looks like a great looter shooter. It looks amazing and all that kind of stuff. I'm looking forward to this. And then IGN's like, well, really groundbreaking, like looter shooter, from the studio called Rocksteady. And then to go forward, it's positive conversation and talk about it. They get the preview, understanding what the game is, not what it's not.
Right.
And then everybody is kind of celebrating more or less about a quality title coming out. And at that point, you would have uh maybe more of a celebration about what the game is, not what it's not, and not a like attack against what it's not. But we live in the reality where it's like that we have the history of Rocksteady, right? We have the history of the Batman series, the Arkham series, and what we all wanted. And I was on that when we first got the gameplay reveal. That was my initial reaction too.
Yeah.
Right?
Same.
But I'm never gonna judge a game for what it's not. Right? Like even
Judge a
back
game
then, I was
for
like,
what you want it to be.
right. Back then, I was like, I'm sure it's still gonna be fun, because like in Rocksteady, I don't question their talent, about making games. And Suicide Squad is just a fantastic freaking game. Like it's super fun, well made, has a really good story to it. All these different things, right? And like it from like Pong and Steel been doing a lot of the
So shout out to
end
Pong. He's
game
in the chat.
stuff. Yeah, they've talked about how great the end game was too. Like I haven't gotten as far there, right? But I pretty much played through the whole game, story wise and stuff, and I really enjoyed it. I think it was a fantastic game. It is not a bad game, right?
Yep.
But I feel like the media had decided that because it wasn't an Arkham game, it wasn't a traditional single player Rocksteady game, that this live game service looter shooter element got forced upon the studio or whatever. This is like, let's rally against this and let's send a message to make sure this never happens again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're going to dogpile on this game. So much so,
Yeah,
is
the
like
article.
even after they had their 5 out of 10 review,
Mm.
right? They had a video with an article that said like, I hope that Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, kills the looter shooter genre.
And then a couple days later, had an article about Helldivers 2 and how great it was.
Right. So my thing is, yeah, and it, like I was listening to a podcast earlier, and one of the people that works for IGN was in there, and he replied to me because I said the same thing. Is like, and he's like, that's just an editorial, right? Now, I think big games media has lost the sight of this too. Okay, and I think they are just, well, it's just our writers, it's just our people that write our pieces, it's just the individuals, reviewers on opinions. You know, it's just is what it is. Overall, when a person reads an article or sees a video from a big publication, the reason why it has weight is because it's IGN.
Yeah.
It's because it's GameSpot. It's not because of who made the video or who wrote the article, right? IGN is what stands behind whatever the message is that you're putting out, right? Now you can say we're just here for editorials and it's just people's opinions and all that kind of stuff. IGN is the company that's making money off of that and that is deciding what to and what not to publish, right?
Yeah. Right.
At the end of the day, when the consumers see this stuff, it is not this person who wrote this article. It is IGN saying this, right? And that is lost upon the big games media, and there's no changing that from the consumer's perspective. So if they say, well, that's the wrong way to look at things, that's their job to make sure that's more clear, right? And less IGN branding around everything, or like this doesn't represent the views of IGN, this, or whatever.
But they wouldn't do that because that would give them less money.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like they're like when you put something out as a publication, you're approving or not approving what message is sent out there, right? So that IGN stamp that's on whatever they publish, that's their decision. So it's IGN. If anybody says something that is working or paid by a institution or whatever within that organization on that platform, that's a representation of that platform, right? It's not as simple as like, oh, it's just that person's opinion. It's just editorial. It's just
they start to individualize like to sort of separate themselves from negativity.
But then, right? So they do that, but our reviews do matter so much. Oh, it's such a big deal that we don't get a review code, that we don't get early access to this because it's bad for the consumer if we don't, right? Oh, it's damaging to the consumer. How is the consumer ever going to learn if anything's good or bad if we don't get early access to these things, right? But then it's just one person's opinion. So you're trying to tell me that one guy's opinion holds the weight on the entire fate and on if something is good or bad, right? The truth is, unfortunately, it does hold a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And they know that, and they want to keep that power, right? Because if they don't have that influence, they don't have that power, they're less relevant.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I want them to never get a code again. I want them to never get access to anything again. I want them to lose all access to anything to do with games media, to do with any gaming company. I want them to be blacklisted from the entire industry. Everything. Just like, no, we will not deal with these people anymore, right?
Yeah.
And see what happens to their integrity. To see if they start to have some or not, right? When they try and come back.
Yeah, because it's doing this weird thing where if they don't get a review code, I genuinely feel like that hurts the review. What score they would give it, and that's when you get into the integrity thing, where you've had preconceptions of a game.
Multiplayer game, right?
Yeah.
Where was the complaints about not getting Helldivers 2 codes early?
Exactly. Exactly. It really gets into a lot of interesting discussions of like what journalism is now. A lot of people in our chat have a lot of good points. Mike pointed out that the game journalism community is by far one of the most egotistical and dismissive group. I do feel like a lot of journalists put themselves on pedestals of importance, I do
Yeah.
feel like that's a big problem in journalism with these big names. Like, oh, they sort of protect themselves of like from criticism because of their title in the journalism space. That's a problem. I feel like another problem is kind of what we're going into of having a preconception of a game affect its score. What you think a game should be or shouldn't be, and if it doesn't fit that criteria in your brain, then that means the game itself is a failure. That's happened to quite a bit games. Suicide Squad is a great example of that. They wanted it to be basically Arkham 3 or 4. I guess it would be 4. They basically wanted it Arkham 4. A lot of people wanted it to be Arkham 4. When I first saw the gameplay, I was like, oh, that's different. It's different than what I expected. Like, I don't know if the game is for me, but I'll try it. I tried the game. I beat it in like a day or two. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Um, but I wanted to try it for myself. I did have a preconceived notion, but I'm not reviewing something. I'm not, telling the world like, oh, I'm punishing this game because it's not what I want it to be. And I feel like if you are reviewing something and your integrity is on the line, your job as a journalist should be, and I feel like it's just slowly going away, should be really reviewing what's in front of you and judging it based on that, not anything in the past of your expectations of like, oh, it didn't have this mechanic from Arkham. This is a totally different game, different, um, just a different. It's a different game. It's a different vision. Rocksteady had a different vision for this game. So with that in mind, I just feel like a lot of these journalists out here nowadays, not only do they do that, they also get into a mentality where you're like, oh, I feel like I have to punish a game if this other reviewer didn't like the game, or if someone else didn't like this game, that means I have to hate this game too. And that gets into a whole other conversation.
Yeah, there's hive
But
mind. There's like science to it and shit. Like it's
you know,
crazy stuff. Like if you actually look at how people's perception and like can affect your own perception, on something.
yeah,
And that's where that kind of stuff has a lot of impact. And there's usually somebody first out the gates with an opinion, and sometimes that's kind of echoed and copied, right?
right,
I think a lot of the integrity or like being able to be objective about games has kind of gone out of the window. Where it's like you want to be part of the right side of the club on how you view something. Now it's like, and it's what happens is weird is like when certain games start to be championed too, they start to overlook things as well, right? Like, oh, this game's amazing, all over the god, but like it can have like these certain issues that never get addressed or talked about, you
yeah,
know. But like other games could be amazing, and then the whole review could like just highlight those same kind of issues that the other games didn't ever talk about. And it gets confusing and like for the consumers because like there's really no overall like great idea anymore to be able to tell the quality of a game. Like if a
yeah.
game as quality as Suicide Squad can come out and get a 5
That's so crazy
from
to
a
me.
major publication,
Yeah,
like what are we really at, like what are we asking for games to be, like because talk about graphics, talk about story,
that's why games
talk
used to
about
be reviewed on that scale. I remember
yeah,
we had this
like
conversation with like the old way of reviewing games, like graphics would go into the score,
yeah,
audio, all this different
audio
stuff.
game, the gameplay, the fun factor, you know what I mean, like the replayability, like all of these things used to matter. It used to be more bad for a game to not have any replayability, right? But now that's almost like champion. Like, oh, this was a great singular experience that I'll remember forever. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, it's only can these people could make an experience like that. That used to be a knock on games back in the day because people wanted more value for their product, right? People that was something like how much replayability is in this, and like I was like not really replayable, like okay, it's like that's why like new game plus and all that kind of stuff matters now, like still to this day a little bit, but that now
Yeah,
it's almost like if well they made a game kind of built around that aspect, right? They're not really asking people to have to pay any money, right? Like there's options for people to spend money for sure, but like it's optional. But like the game's built around like fun and replayability, but built around it built on a foundation of quality, right? It's
Right.
and when we play it and it's like, oh, this is freaking awesome, right? Like, how is this a five? It just doesn't register in any kind of realm of possibility how the experience that you see and feel and play
Yeah.
is bad. Like it's just not like it doesn't it's weird. It makes you understand, but then you see the article about how you wish kills this genre comes across as okay, well, it's an agenda, right? But then they're
Right.
like, oh, but that's just an editorial, right? Because the same publication has the way undervalued score, then also has an article that comes out and says, this should kill this genre forever. And then it constantly complains about not getting review codes early. Dog piled on the game with the previews, everything under the sun, possibly, and then continuously tweet about it. Individual people from the same company making videos and content about it. All these other things ongoing and ongoing and ongoing, right? To try
Mm.
and it seems like they're just trying to sabotage this game, and that's just from one publication,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, that's the biggest publication in gaming. So, what do people tell you that that doesn't have an effect? You know, like it has that has an effect. It does. It really does. It has an effect on a lot of games. Now, I I think it's just really weird when people say that the games media doesn't matter and all this kind of stuff, or the review
Yeah.
scores
It
don't
definitely
matter and all
matters.
that. It's like it has an impact on a potential
Psychologically, it does have an impact. Yeah.
success of these games, and also has impact on the a potential that they could have to succeed or not succeed, and all these other kind of things, and which can affect getting sequels, can affect the amount of money the studios get, it can affect
Hmm.
a lot of different things. And I hate to see a game get dogpiled on that just absolutely does not deserve it. Right?
Yeah,
This is not
PlayStation
like
has clauses at their studio, like if to reach a certain user score on Metacritic to get bonuses. So if you're saying reviews don't matter and developers are literally relying on a game doing well on Metacritic or a review site to get their bonuses,
yeah,
I mean, what other thing do you need at that point? You know, I do feel like the psychological aspect is interesting too. It does get into a thing where you hear this game is bad from said media, then you're like, oh well, I guess I won't buy it. You know, it does have that effect. I
yeah,
try not to get into that mindset for a lot of games. Like, oh well, I was interested in this game anyway. I'm gonna buy it. I'm sure some people
yeah.
do that too, but
Well, there's been studies on it, 3-bit, like
yeah.
from like colleges, professors like do like big studies and stuff like that over like this was from the publisher, some of the gaming publishers and stuff would like run these studies, right? That are ran at some of these places.
Yeah.
And they would do things like and I have all the info, but I don't have it right in front of me. They would do things like, okay, we're going to take this focus group. We're going to have them read a bunch of positive information about this game and have them play the game. Okay. Then we're going to get their impressions on the game afterwards, right?
Mm,
Then we're going to take this other group and we're going to have them read a bunch of negative things about the game and then go and have them play this game and then give the impressions, right?
yeah.
The people that read, even though like, and they had people hooked up to crap and like their brains and all this kind of stuff, right? Even though the people that their experience, they could tell mentally and everything was the same when they were playing, right? But then when they went to leave their impressions, the people that only experienced, like, oh, read all the bad stuff,
Hmm.
said they didn't like it as much. And they also, like, wrote more negative impressions, right?
Mm, yeah.
The people that read a bunch of stuff beforehand, right, that was positive, like, were more positive and left a bunch more positive impressions
It's
with the same
interesting.
experience, right?
Yeah.
So like there's studies about this and like about the implicate about putting things on platforms, or I mean in games media, early access, all this like kind of stuff, because like from these multi million dollar businesses, they don't like want the games media and some kind of hive mind mentality just having the fate of their product in their hands. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And unfortunately, that's kind of what the world we live in now, because you don't know what's going to be cool or what's not. You know,
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
there's
there's
no rhyme
other
or reason
studies
to
where
it.
people like I remember there was some study I remember in college where someone was like in a line where they would just pick out a random person and everyone just starts forming up in a line next to this person just to see what they would do. Would they get in this line or just sort of stay where they're at? And 100% of the time, that person would jump in that line, even though they don't know where
Yeah,
this line leads. It's very psychological for. It's like it is hive mind mentality, but it's just
yeah.
people validating, I guess, their inner thoughts.
I used to do this thing, bro, in middle school,
Yeah.
and I just found it fascinating because I started realizing this kind of stuff like when I was in middle school. I would purposefully, like it was when I knew the bell was gonna ring soon in a class. You're waiting for the bell to ring and you go to the next class, but then you get your backpack and you got to put your stuff away, right?
Mm-hmm.
I purposefully started like grabbing my backpack and opening it, right, just to cause everybody else to start doing it. Because once you did it, then you
Uh-huh.
hear another one go, then you hear another one go, then you hear
Mm-hmm.
another one go, right? So I always made sure I was first because I wanted to see like how much I could push it to where like I had started doing it to where it was like 5 minutes early and like 6 minutes early and like 7 minutes early. And then the
Mm.
other crazy thing is like I realized it started having an impact on the teacher, because when the kids started doing all that stuff, she kind of like started winding down and then was
Mm-hmm.
like more chill and like less teaching and stuff. So like ended up being like we got like an extra like 5 minutes of just chill time before the end of class, because I'd start putting the unzipping the backpack
Yeah.
earlier and it just do a little bit earlier each day, right?
Yeah.
And it was crazy how much a little thing like just opening your backpack and just can cause somebody else to feel like, oh, I need to do that now.
Yeah.
Then
They're
I
like,
need to do that
so
now.
you don't want to be
Then
out
I
of
need to do that
the
now.
convo. You're like, oh shoot, yeah, maybe I should put
Yeah, and the
my
whole class does it, even though there's like no reason to, but somebody else did it, so you feel like you have the reason that you have to do it too, right?
you know, that's
Like
that.
if you're
So funny.
driving and you see people change lanes to the left, like 5 different cars change lanes to the left in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
like you're probably like, do I need to change lanes to the left? Like because you maybe think there's some up there, right? There could be nothing.
Yeah.
But like if you see everybody doing the same thing, all of a sudden you start to want to feel that
They're like,
need to
oh,
do
do I
that.
need to get into that left lane?
Yeah.
I I'm starting to not signal anymore because every time I start signaling, cars do not want to let me over. It's like it's a weird thing.
Oh
Do
yeah.
cars do that with you? Like you put your signal on, you're being a good citizen, a good car person, and they're like, oh, word?
Oh yeah. Then they speed up.
They're
Yeah.
speeding up.
Oh yeah. It's like
It's
I
freaking
hate that,
annoying.
man. Yeah,
It's
we were in
annoying.
this situation today. We got stuck behind like a classic car that was broken down, kind of, but it
Mhm.
wasn't broken down. It's kind of moving and it'd stop and it would go. And
Yeah.
then we got like crazy traffic and we couldn't get over out from behind this car, so we ended up having to wait forever. And nobody would let
Yeah.
us. The
Yeah.
one good Samaritan finally
And I
lets
went
you
to go
change
visit
lanes.
you in Texas, and you guys have a lot of like, you got to make a decision. That's something I learned about Texas. Wherever you're driving, you got to know because there's a lot of roads that just randomly like, oh, turn left now, and then it's like this separate sort of interstate. There's a lot of like quick exits. You got to make sure you're paying attention. That's
Oh,
what I
in the
understand.
high
Yeah,
five in downtown,
yeah, yeah,
like in those areas, yeah, you got to know where you're going, bro.
yeah.
Like
You
really
gotta
quickly, you
know.
got to get over like 4 lanes in like a minute in heavy traffic. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that was one thing I remember when I came down there. All right, man. We got one more topic. I don't want to hold you for too long. So we went sort of through the negative side, but we're gamers, right? So we're both looking for some games this year to look forward to. I'm looking forward to Hellblade 2, probably the most. That game really captivated me story wise. I thought it was an interesting take on like schizophrenia, a creative way to get you to kind of understand that having a creative way to get you to understand that deficit from a different point of view. And the audio in that game was amazing. So yeah, I'm hyped for that game. Avowed, Indiana Jones, all these different stuff. So great year. I'm excited for the games this year. I wanted you to tell me what games you're personally excited for this year, and why.
Yeah, I Dragon's Dogma 2 is one I'm looking
Oh
forward to.
shoot, when's that come out?
Yeah. April, I think. Or
Okay.
maybe March, late March. Yeah, March, into March,
Oh
March
dang, that
22nd.
is
Yeah.
soon.
Um, so that's probably the next big one I'm excited for. I am gonna probably play Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth
Mm-hmm.
as well. Because I liked Remake a lot, but I don't know, for
Yeah,
some reason I think it's because of Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. I just like don't want to move right into another big JRPG right
yeah,
now, so
feel
I've
that.
kind of put on a little bit of the back burner. Um, so there's that. I'm really looking forward to Avowed.
Yeah, Avowed's gonna be pretty cool.
Avowed is like high up, maybe number one. Indiana Jones as well. Really looking forward to that. Age of Mythology. Now that I found out they're actually hitting console this year for sure. That's gonna be awesome.
That's
We're
gonna be
looking
cool.
forward to that. Yeah, and because Age Two, I
I've
played.
only played H2
You played it on
years ago.
console?
No, I haven't even
Oh,
played on
dude,
console.
the Age Two Definitive Edition on console is so freaking good, man.
Does it have like a huge learning curve? Like, do I need to
No,
like? No.
it
Okay,
doesn't.
that's cool.
It's pretty straightforward and simple. It's
Because like Halo Wars was like, okay, maybe I could like this genre. Like, I will play any genre of any
yeah.
game. I think everybody in Fun Spec. No, I'll play like a dating sim or like a coffee. Right now. I'm playing Coffee Talk, and that's my game right now. Where literally you're just making coffee, talking to people. But Age is one game I always wanted to sort of jump into. I played Age 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So it's not too bad. That's what you're saying.
It's not like
Okay.
you got to become an RTS lover, bro.
I
Got to
think I
get you
could.
on.
I think I can. It is not a lost hope thing for RTS. I think I can jump into
Have you
that.
ever got into Command and Conquer or anything in the back in the day?
No.
Okay.
Is this the one genre I never had a lot of RTS games? I think
Start with Halo Wars.
Halo Wars. Yeah, I love Halo Wars. So
We'll just like really get it. Did you beat Halo Wars 2?
I beat the first one.
Oh,
I think,
dude.
but
Play Halo Wars.
two is harder. Two is kicking my butt.
Dude, you gotta play Halo Wars 2 and then play through the expansion, the
Okay.
DLC. Especially for the Halo story, man.
Yeah,
Like the Halo Wars 2 story stuff in there, especially in the
it was sick.
expansion.
Yeah, I liked it.
Okay, so you did play it? You played
No,
that part?
this from what I played, it was like the brutes
Okay.
and like the. I
Oh,
was
like
just
it
like,
gets better and better and better, and like the expansion story is even better. You
okay.
gotta.
Yeah, whoever,
Um,
everybody in chat, if you guys have RTS games, maybe that will be something I start doing. I'll start with Halo Wars and then go down. Give me like baby games, baby RTS games, games that I could like sort of jump into as a new RTS player. Pong says Unicorn Overlord is like an RTS
yeah,
light.
like a
So
JRPG slash RTS light. Yeah,
yeah, because I've always been interested in the genre. It's never a thing where I'll never play RTS. It's just a fact that I don't know. I don't know which one to kind of jump into. I get kind of intimidated sometimes, but I've always been interested. So I'll definitely jump into that. But awesome, man. Been
Oh,
a
and then one more, Star Wars Outlaws. I gotta mention that.
Is that this year?
I think
That
so.
is.
I, yeah, I
Shoot,
think it's
this
supposed to be
is
this year.
this is a good year. Now that I'm thinking
A
about it.
lot. It's a fantastic, dude. Even if you just took out what we got for like the first half, of, like first couple months of this year, that's like a lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
And there's so much more great stuff to come, man. And like a Stellar Blade. Uh,
yeah.
I'm
Look
looking
forward
forward
to
to
that.
that.
My dad's looking forward to Indiana Jones. Like he doesn't look forward to a lot of games, but he's like,
Yeah,
ooh, okay. So
yeah.
that's
Indiana
cool.
Jones is catching on some of the casuals, bro, and getting their attention. I think it's gonna be a big. I think it's gonna be a big game.
Yeah, I feel like that's gonna get some Game Pass peeps. So
Yep.
that would definitely be one of them. Charlie Hustle says, "Are there really unicorns in it?" StarCraft. I do have StarCraft. have like a special edition with the second one. I just never dove into it. All right, and that was it. That was it, Mav. We made it. We did it.
That was it. That's
That was
it.
it. So,
Easy peasy, man.
yeah, easy peasy. No, I appreciate you for coming on. I was figuring out what to do. The last minute guest thing, but I always appreciate you coming by. So if you guys agreed with our points of views or not, let us know in the comment section down below. If you're watching on demand, Mav, please tell people where they can find you on social media and whatever you got going on.
Again, 3 bits. Awesome to see your new show. I'm honored to be the first guest, and I love everything you did. The intro stuff is awesome. The look of it, everything is awesome. You did a great job leading the conversation. As the host, absolutely great job, dude. So
Thanks.
a great first show, and honored to be a part of it. But if you guys want to check out what we got going on, come hang out on YouTube. It's Fun Speculation. Got multiple shows over there: Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We do podcasts every night of the week, except for Wednesdays. And sometimes we do solo streams and game streams, reactions, and more. And then if you are on social media on X, you can find me at Fun Speculation there, where you can find updates on the channel and also just random thoughts and stuff like that.
Yes.
But 3-bit, awesome, man. Do you want me to say, hey, 3-bit, where can everybody find you? Or is that how we're doing things?
I mean,
hey,
feels natural.
Find you, 3-bit.
Feels natural being on all your shows. Yeah, everyone can find me here every Sunday. We'll figure out what to do next Sunday. Pixelated Echoes is the show I wanted to launch. So I appreciate everybody in the chat. There was a lot more people than I thought would be in chat. So appreciate Poison Maniac, Pong Soul, FarQ, Matthew Gale, Decado, C Money, a couple of other people who jumped in later, Pong, even Black Viking popped in. He was one of the first people who popped in the chat, like, hey. So I appreciate all you guys for dropping in and supporting me on multiple shows I'm on. I talk to you guys in chat. You guys have you give me a little bit of like 3-bit, where's your video, or it's all 3-bit's fault. I find that stuff is hilarious. So I appreciate everybody in this community. It's always been fun doing all these shows. So everybody, you guys know I appreciate you all. And I will see you guys on the next episode of the Pixelated Echoes. Bye, y'all.